There are legends in Japan that are just legends, myths, beliefs or fables. But sometimes, legends have some truth. We bring you some stories that will make you think, did it really happen? Pay close attention to the details, because now are starting a deep adventure into the darkness of the Japan urban legends. We are now starting this story. Where are we? Nice to see that you're following. We literally said 10 seconds ago that we are in Japan. Whatever. Here this first story will be begin in Takao, specifically. To put ourselves in history, this tunnel, because we are going to talk about a tunnel, was built in 1927 and is 444 meters long. This is important because, as I am sure you know, in some Eastern cultures, the number 4 is considered cursed. And personally, I have it as a lucky number and credit card number as 4444. This is my choice, whatever. Stories say that the ghosts can appear at night and even while on passing cars to scare the passengers, causing fatal accidents. It is also said that there are ghosts inside the tunnel. They are said that there is a mirror inside the tunnel, and if you look into it and see your stepmother, a ghost, you will suffer a terrible death. This is the story of Goro Otaka, former head of daytime maintenance in the tunnel, because after 9 o'clock at night, no one dares to enter. Goro used to leave work around 8:30 p.m., but that day, a power failure left the tunnel without light. Because of his job, the supervisor had to fulfill his duties, and so he had to be the one to stay to solve the problem, as it is an extremely dangerous passage. After working here for 5 years and not finding anything strange, although with a bit of a bad feeling, he decided to do his job, even though he knew what the legends said. At about 9:15, he was fiddling with the fuse box when he heard a loud bang and then noticed broken glass behind him. It turned out to be a car that had hit the only mirror in the tunnel. Quickly, he tried to call an ambulance, but there was no signal in there. But here nothing surprising. Let's be honest, guys, it's just a tunnel, a normal one. But let's continue. Strangely and confused by everything that had happened, he heard muttering where he could only see smoke and flames, and what seemed to be a person moving their jaw, trying to scream. He decided to help in any way he could, but when he arrived, the door was completely jammed and the fire was getting bigger and bigger. He knew he had to find a way to break the window, but his tools were just past the road. So he looked down at the ground in desperation and found one of the thick panes of glass that had fallen out of the mirror. He grabbed a decent-sized triangular-shaped one and determined to hit the window with one of the picks. However, he looked at the glass and thought he saw something strange moving behind him. With trepidation, he looked again at the reflection and clearly distinguished, in spite of his nervous and broad gaze, a figure right on his left shoulder. As frightened, he turned around and saw nothing. He rubbed his eyes, thinking he was delirious. Once again, and taking into account that it was very likely that the car would explode in a short time, there again a wrong information that common people have because of Hollywood movies, but cars do not explode, they are just burning, excepted if, going back to the story, he hit the window, cutting himself with a fragment he had in his fist. Suddenly, he looked down at the bloody crystal in his hand again when the figure he had seen before appeared behind his other shoulder, only this time much sharper. It slowly approached his ear and began to whisper,
3, 2, 1.
Then the loud explosion sounded. It was only 3 nights later that he woke up in the hospital. When he looked down, he realized that his legs would have to be amputated and that he would never walk again. He quit his job, never left the house, and removed all the mirrors around him for fear of being reunited with a face he could never forget. Goro Otaka was lucky. Normally, whoever looks into the mirror of the Kiyotaka tunnel and sees a ghost will suffer a horrible death. This time we will talk about Jikininki, also known as man-eating spirits. They are the spirits of people who have behaved wrongly in life. When they die, they are condemned to seek out and eat human corpses. In Western legends, we find a similar figure in ghouls, same ones as in Fallout 4. In fact, the main character in this Japanese story is Muzo Kukushi, a priest who belonged to the Rinzai school of Zen, a Buddhist movement. Muzo was traveling alone in the mountainous and sparsely populated province of Mino. As night fell, he set out to find shelter. Since he could not find a house in the vicinity, he decided to spend the night outdoors. But luckily, at the last moment, he spotted a hill in the distance with an Anenjitsu, a small hermitage, and he decided to spend the night there. The old priest who lived there replied with bad manners, that he never received anyone and sent him to the village in the valley, where he was sure to be received. Puzzled by his treatment, Muzo heeded the old priest's word and went to the village, where he was received with great hospitality at the magistrate's house. As soon as he entered the house, many people were gathered in the main room, as if in mourning, but our protagonist will not care about it. But it may be a Z generation, we'll never know. Muzo was given a separate room so that he could rest in peace. Around midnight, a young man entered the room, bowed to him, and explained that his father had recently died and that the people he had seen in the main room were relatives and acquaintances who had come to pay their respect and condolences. He also told him that both his family and his neighbors would be leaving for the neighboring village because, according to an old tradition in the area, they should leave the corpses alone. Muzo expressed his condolences to the young man and regretted that he had not been informed earlier, as he would have performed the funeral rites before everyone left. He promised the young man that he would stay to watch over his father's corpse, as he was not afraid at all. After saying this, the relatives of the deceased left, and after performing the appropriate rituals and prayers over the corpse, he watched over it during the night. Let's be honest, guys. We all know that Muzo just wanted to sleep comfortably in his room, but this is what he wanted us to believe in his story. But suddenly, during the night, the atmosphere started to change and Muzo woke up. Then he saw a strange figure of great size and grotesque shape crept into the room. Muzo froze. The strange creature looked like a rotting corpse with claws and glowing eyes. It lifted the corpse of the deceased and devoured it greedily, then ate all the offerings. When it had finished its macabre feast, it disappeared. The next morning, the priest waited outside the house for the villagers. When they entered, they showed no surprise at not finding the corpse. It was not the first time it had happened. Muzo told what he had seen, but no one was surprised, because it was in line with the stories they already knew. Between us, everyone knew that a crazy creature would come to this house, and no one said anything to Muzo. This is what we can say when people really don't give a shit about you. Muzo asked if it was the reason the old priest was living alone in the hill. Surprised by Muzo's words, they replied that there was no hermitage on the hill, let alone a priest living there. Muzo did not answer and remained silent. Had the ghost deceived him, or Muzo was a big drinker of sake? We'll never know, or maybe we will. Full of doubt in his mind, he said goodbye to the villagers, left the village and returned to the hermitage on the hill. It was not difficult for him to find the place. The old priest he had spoken to the night before came out to meet him, bowed and apologized for his bad manners, for not giving him shelter the night before. The old man replied that he was terribly ashamed to have seen him in his true form. For it was the terrible creatures who had devoured the corpse and the offerings that night. He told Muzo how he had become a Jikininki, a man-eating ghost, because in life he had been a bad priest, not performing the rituals for which he was paid as a monk, being interested only in money. After his death, he had been reincarnated as a hideous and deformed creature as punishment for his behavior. The Jininki begged Muzo to take pity on him and perform a Segaki sacrifice, a body offering in honor of hungry spirits, to bring an end to his punishment. After the request was made, the old man and the shrine disappeared, leaving Muzo kneeling before an ancient moss-covered grave. Gozu, translated as cause head, yeah I know, like this the only thing which scares us is to continue listening this story. But no worries, this is a cool, and do not forget to subscribe to my channel. So, this is a Japanese urban legend about an absolutely terrifying story about an animal with the body of a man and the head of a cow, which is said to cause a chain of supernatural and terrifying events just by telling it. The first traces of the legend date back to the 17th century, with rumors of a village where the story of Gozo was told. It is said that the entire town was traumatized, and in fear they isolated themselves from the rest of the world, so that many of its inhabitants eventually died of starvation or committed suicide for fear that if they left home, the co-head would come after them. The village's horrific tale reached the ears of the central government, which, fearing that story would be repeated itself, decided to eradicate all existing written records of the terrifying creature. Yep, at this point of the story, you do not understand yet how a co-head would terrorize us. The only bad thing that a co-head would do is to move, but let's see where this goes. In addition, the very mention of Gozu was forbidden under penalty of death. However, such a ban could not prevent the story from being scattered in pieces all over Japan, waiting for the bravest to discover it. That is why no one knows the whole story, though it is said that even telling a small part of Gozo's legend can cause many to suffer severe trauma and risk of death. There is a rumor not too long ago of a school teacher who, tired of his students behaving badly on field trips, came up with a foolproof idea to keep his students quiet. He began telling old horror and ghost stories to the children, who curiously developed an addiction to morbid tales and avoided the teachers. On one of the trips, the teacher promised them that he would tell them a forbidden story, the most mysterious and darkest story he had ever told them, but that he would only tell it to them if absolutely all of them behaved well on the trip. And so they did. No one child raised his voice, thought or did anything wrong on the trip. On the way back, the teacher got up from his seat and warned everyone to be quiet because he was going to tell them the story of Gozu. Once he began to tell the story, many of the students began to scream and cover their ears. The children shouted,
Stop! Don't tell us!
As if he did not hear or see them, the man continued with his story. It is said that his eyes turned white and his voice became much deeper, as if he was possessed by Gozu himself. When the teacher finally regained consciousness, there was a horrible sight all around him. The bus had gone off the road. Many children were covered in blood and wounds from the blow, and although they were not crying, their faces showed only horror and pain, but not a single cry could be heard. The driver, who had suffered multiple injuries from the windshield glass, sat motionless in his seat, clutching the steering wheel tightly, sweating and shaking, while his face was so pale that it looked as if he was already dead. We don't know what happened next, but the teacher never mentioned Gozo again, never told any horror stories, and neither he nor any one of the students ever talked about what had happened that day. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next Friday on this same channel. Bye bye!